For some voters in Israel, it may feel a bit like Groundhog Day. They're headed back to the polls tomorrow for a fourth time in less than 2 years. Well, Tuesday's election is turning into a bit of a referendum on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In the shadow of his corruption trial, Israeli opinion polls suggest the result may be no clear winner. Mr. Netanyahu and his right-wing allies are seeking a stable majority, which has proved elusive in 3 previous elections. So the Prime Minister is going all out for every last vote, courting Israel's Arab voters and promising direct flights to Mecca for Muslim Israelis. Looming over all of this, of course, is the pandemic. Let's connect you now to our correspondent, Hadas, who joins us now live. So Mr. Netanyahu's certainly struggling with this corruption scandal, but hoping that his response to the pandemic with this swift rollout of vaccines there will help boost his chances. But looking at the polls, it looks like we're going to see potentially another deadlock.
Lynda, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has definitely been criticized for part of how he has handled the coronavirus pandemic. But one bright spot has been the robust rollout of the vaccines that has almost brought life almost back to normal. As you can see at the Central Market here in Jerusalem behind me, it is full of life. But what's not clear is whether that will be enough for the voters as they head to the polls tomorrow, whether that will give him enough of a boost, which so far we haven't necessarily seen the polls react to that. He hasn't seen a huge boost after the vaccine rollout, so it's not clear whether that will be enough to put him over the edge to keep him in power tomorrow.
Benjamin Netanyahu has been crisscrossing the country ahead of Israel's 4th election in just under 2 years, hammering the message that he's the one that turned the startup nation into the vaccination nation and brought historic peace agreements with Arab countries. With his corruption trial now underway, Netanyahu is desperate to win enough seats in Tuesday's election to remain in power. On the ground, this election is almost entirely staked on whether voters are for Netanyahu or against him. Yair Lapid, a smooth-talking former television anchor, sits out in front among the anti-Bibi bloc. His centrist Yesh Atid party looks set for a strong showing. The approach is low-key, refusing to rise to Netanyahu's provocations until finally issuing a challenge to a TV duel.
אמרת שאני היריב שלך? מול יריב מתייצבים. שאלת איפה לפיד? הנה אני.
Out on the streets, it's hard to miss those who want the leader gone.
The anti-Netanyahu camp up and down the country is passionate, dedicated, and loud, having weekly protests here in Jerusalem against the Prime Minister. But it's not clear if the energy will translate into the actual numbers that they need to form a cohesive opposition that could unseat Netanyahu.
The big challenge for the opposition is stitching together left and right. One of Netanyahu's former cabinet ministers, Gideon Sa'ar, broke off to form a party called New Hope, claiming he's the true bastion of the Israeli right. But Sa'ar's support has ebbed after a strong start. Then there's Naftali Bennett, another former Netanyahu lieutenant whose Yamina party may end up holding the keys to Netanyahu's future. Their seats could help put Netanyahu over the 61-seat majority he needs to hold on to power. Or, by joining the opposition, they could be the ones to sink him. Despite the many challengers, protests, a corruption case in which he has pled not guilty, not to mention his 4th election campaign in almost 2 years, Netanyahu presses on. One of his most loyal aides explains it like this.
The knowledge that you have to learn from your own mistakes in order to get better. And the feeling, the inner feeling that you are there because God sent you to save the people of Israel and to lead them in troubled times, I think this gives him the power and the support of the people.
And Lynda, one of the key things we have to look out for tomorrow after the polls close might not actually be the numbers that Netanyahu gets. It will be the numbers that some of these smaller parties get, whether they even make it into the Knesset or whether they get enough votes, because those smaller parties may actually be the kingmakers. They may be the ones that decide who will actually become Prime Minister.
All right, Hadas for us. Good to have you across all the election coverage. We will speak to you again very soon. Thanks so much.